Russell, since we played the David Sullivan interview, it's getting picked up everywhere, and now other news outlets are running the story that Declan is set to leave West Ham. Sullivan was telling us this morning they expect big offers to come in as of this moment onwards. And you would say, Russell, probably on behalf of other West Ham fans, thanks for what you've done, Declan. In an ideal world, you'd like him to go into next season, but it certainly doesn't look as if that's going to happen now.
Apparently not. It seems like momentum is accruing. It's surprising, I suppose, that on one are you saying that what Declan Rice is doing is just being diplomatic and good-hearted and kind?
Yeah, there's very little chance that. Declan Rice didn't turn down £200,000 a week, so he could stay with West Ham for another 2 years, did he? So if David Sullivan's logic is to be followed, right. that David was so desperate for him to have that extra £10 million, but Declan turned it down because he just wanted to play for West Ham for a fraction of that money. All roads lead to this particular Damascus, doesn't it? They're going to be a door exiting left stage for Declan Rice.
Yeah.
And it will all be about how much money. And if David thinks he's going to get £125 million for Declan Rice, I think he needs to rethink that, because I don't think that market is there for Declan. I think it will be sub 100.
Well, even if it is,
West Ham fans now, because they're all massive today.
Is Jude Bellingham to Real Madrid for what, 80, 90, 86 million? That's a good indicator, isn't it?
Well, Real Madrid is one thing, and English Premier League clubs are another. So Real Madrid's track record of paying 90 million for Eden Hazard and other players that they've bought has not necessarily served them that well. But I think it's a fool's errand to suggest that whoever's buying Declan Rice in England would do necessarily what Real Madrid do.
Yeah. Did you ever think in your wildest dreams, Russell, footballers would earn what they earn? This fella quite rightly says there's got to be a ceiling, but now the Saudis are in town. Benzema's getting 200 million a season.
I suppose it's difficult and perhaps unfair to focus regulation in particular on the wages of the players. Why not?
Why's that?
Because I suppose it's one of the areas where people from a normal background can emerge into glory, wealth and stardom. Not that those are the only things to achieve. If you're looking at regulation, why not regulate...
If it's harming the overall economic structure of the game,
then
you're in a territory where that argument is relatively
Simon,
futile.
I'm not querying the idea that corporatisation and commercialisation has harmed the sport. It plainly has. Everywhere you look at it, sort of corruption, hypocrisy, but and it's turned it into an entertaining global product. But I think we can see the way that it's going. It's with the emerging preeminence of the MLS with this Messi move, the Saudi Arabia gear. What seems to me, if you're going to regulate it, why regulate it at the end where it's the players? Why not regulate the institutions? Why not regulate the finance behind it?
What does that achieve, Russell? What are you aiming at? You're aiming at your sort of ranting.
Well, what are you aiming at? Why do you want to stop the players earning the money?
I want to have some reasonable level of return inside the game, so the economic sustainability of the game isn't jeopardised. Now, we already know, when we're talking about regulating the players, I'm not suggesting we send them to the poorhouse and send them back to Bob Lord working down in Burnley because he was a land baron once. That ship has sailed, mate. They're already...
Well, what about when, you used to be players on the tube, eating fish and chips in 1986?
Yeah, this isn't Johnny
Julian Dix used to arrive at Upton Park on an horse!
We don't need Jimmy Hill out campaigning for the maximum wage or minimum wage. But the point is that we're at a point where the player salaries are.
But why are you singling out the players? I know why. Because you're a former owner, Simon. And I think it should be the ownership models. Look at the ownership model. Why not have partial fan ownership? Yep. What about restricting that? And what, in the price?
Well, it is restricted.
If you're talking, it was not enough.
It's restricted by the nature of the fact they don't have any money to put in football clubs.
What seems to me, if you're saying that the requirement for regulation is in order to support the grassroots of the game.
Better controls.
Yeah, but what is the purpose of the control? You don't want control for control's sake. We've experienced enough of that in the last few years, haven't we?
Football clubs are sustainable and not sustainable by individual whims. Do we really want individuals? I'm a case in point that run out of money after spending 50 million quid, and the football club becomes in jeopardy as a result of it. Do we really want nation states that have different agendas setting the passage and the tone for every other aspect of football?
Absolutely not. Really. But why are you saying that the focus ought to be on the earnings of players
because
rather
that's where
than
all the money goes?
No, what do you really think so? I don't think the money would head in.
So,
no, Simon, I absolutely refute that point. There's no way that the players earning that money is the destination of this endeavour. There's no way that Saudi Arabia are like, how can we make Declan Rice richer, or the players, or Abu Dhabi? How can we make working class English kids richer? That's not the endeavour. It's a corporate, globalist, greenwash, sport wash endeavour.
But by definition, we're talking.
So that's what you got to cap. That's what you got to curtail.
Well, no, not really.
Yes.
Not really. We're talking about the nature of the game and how it's structured currently. And the main beneficiaries of it, it's not me sat here like some demented Grinch saying the players shouldn't get this and they shouldn't get that. Because you can run that argument with movie stars like yourself that get paid far too much money, or go on platforms like Rumble and get paid far too much money for what you're doing there.
Every day, 5 p.m, Rumble.
The fact of the matter is, Russell, if these players, Benzema, Ronaldo and the rest, N'Golo Kante's the latest recruit out there, Simon, if they're going to be offered shed loads of money, it's very difficult to say no to it. As Simon just alluded to there, you've been very successful, mate. You've no doubt been offered pots of it along the way. You can't say no, or can you?
No, you can. You can do what you want, can't you? You can say no if you want. There are people that make decisions based on reasons other than finance all across the world, and usually we admire them and respect them, don't we?
They're few and far between, though, aren't they?
Yeah, that's because we live in an immersive and seductive system, I would argue. I think most people's lives are dominated by finance, even if you talk about a lot of money or very little money.
I mean, where'd you draw the line in terms of moral value? I mean, if you were asked to do a show in Riyadh tomorrow in Saudi Arabia, would you do it?
And who gets to draw this line? No, tomorrow after doing Talksport today, I'd struggle to get out there.
Would you do a show in Saudi?
Well, do you know what? When you start analysing this stuff, right, you remember during the World Cup, you lot, I thought, spoke very lucidly and articulately on the subject. You know, you shouldn't go Qatar, they've done X, Y, Z. Well, really?
I didn't say that, though.
I know you didn't. You offered the counter-argument, Simon. I'm well aware of that, mate. And the pundits that spoke out against Qatar and human rights, but went nevertheless. So, and in a sense, it's an impossible argument to make, because if you look at our own Premier League and indeed our own history, in the end, it becomes complicated. Indeed. You can't ban
nuanced.
It's certainly nuanced and it's complicated. If you start talking about, take the ships out of the Manchester badges because of the potential connotations, well, should we have a little chat about the royal family? If you're talking about symbols that represent inequality and represent power, and I'm certainly not advancing that argument, neither of them. I'm just saying that we should have conversations about power and money and how things are, what ultimately it determines the direction of an endeavour.
This argument, insofar as it's an argument that has any coherency to it, you're saying...
Watch out, Jordan.
You're saying
take that, Russell.
My observation about players getting paid too much money and needing a bit of control and governance in every aspect of sport, whether it's the amount of money comes into sport, whether it's the amount of, whether the owners that have an appropriate methodology or mentality or reasons for being there in the first place should all be interrogated, alongside the players and the remuneration levels, because we're getting to a stage now where there's sustainable. In any other business, whether it's selling Coca-Cola or any other business, you don't have a collective responsibility. You just market your product and you sell it for whatever you want, and you pay the marketing costs and advertising costs you want to do. In football, everything you do, the one space in life where drip-down economics actually does work is football, because football's wages at the very top affect football's wages at the bottom. And the driving factor for which is making football struggle economically is player salaries, and it needs to be addressed.
I just think it's curious that you've identified that as the primary issue.
Because it's taking 90% of the air out of the room, and that's a fact.
I would say, but I think
that's a fact.
I think it's the
not
wrong target,
Russell,
Simon.
Russell, not a sentiment.
I'm not talking about sentimentality either. What is it?
Facts.
Right, all right. Let's move on to some new facts, Simon.
You know, we're coming up to a break in a second.
What precisely is it that you're trying to address? If the problem is the commodification of football, all right, sustainability, then what do you think is having the biggest impact or potentially negative impact on smaller clubs, non-league clubs, clubs throughout the divisions? Is it player wages, or is it the ownership models? Is it the lack of representation?
Unfair distribution.
Right, so redistribution takes the requirement for regulation there, mate, ain't all about the players, it's about ownership models. I think you're aiming at individuals when it could be aimed at culture.
You don't put governance in, all that money that drips down for better distributions will go back into players.
I'm interested to hear that you believe in regulation in this arena, and I wonder if you believe in regulation.
Russell, I've got to tell you,
they're synonyms, Simon.
We are so glad you're with us on what is proving to be a very busy morning. We spoke exclusively to David Sullivan, who was telling us that Declan Rice is more than certain to be out of the football club and playing elsewhere next season.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the Talksport app and on your smart speaker. Talksport.